Hi, and welcome to another edition of Steve Hewitt Ministries podcasts. I'm your host, Steve Hewitt, and these are podcasts on the subjects that I want to talk about. Now, I've been talking a lot about my book, Focused Christianity, but this podcast is going to be something totally, completely different. This podcast is a bit of my testimony and something I hope to honor a dear Christian friend who I just discovered passed away a couple of weeks ago. Chuck Girard, who was Love Song, the first contemporary. People could argue it's the first contemporary Christian band, but they started the recording in 1972, 73. I heard them live either in 72, 73 in Kansas City. They were long-haired hippies. They played guitars. They were not in 72. Christians sang hymns, basically. That was it, and they were record breaking. And in that same time period, when I was a junior, I graduated high school in 73. In 72, I gave my life to Christ. I really, really surrendered to Him. Now, I'd been a Christian for several years, but, I'd been a Christian, not really had a strong relationship with Him. I remember going to youth camp between my sophomore and my junior year. It was at Youth for Christ. And God got a hold of me, and I got a hold of God. And that's when I first felt He was calling me into ministry. I remember my love for the word was so great. One night I started reading Romans, and I turned my lights off, got a flashlight, so I didn't let my parents know I was staying up all night. And I categorized and itemized all the verses in Romans, the entire book. I just fell in love with it, and was half through 1 Corinthians before I realized I probably better go to bed. It was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I fell in love with Jesus, and the Jesus movement was also just starting, and for some reason Chuck Girard and Love Song was coming to Kansas City. They had rented out the Youth for Christ auditorium. It was not a Youth for Christ event, but they had rented out the auditorium, and they were going to sing. I don't even know when. And I can't believe my dad took me to allow me to go hear them, because he would have been against that normally. But I loved their music. It was fantastic. So I got their albums and I got their cassettes. And fast forward a couple of years, I'm going off to school for the first time. I'm going to Southwest Baptist University, and my degree is in Christianity, and I'm training to be a minister, to be a pastor, to be a preacher. Now, I have no excuse for this. There is never an excuse for sin. But I fell away from my Savior. I fell away from Jesus. I don't know if it was the freedom of being at college for the first time. I never dated a lot in high school. Now I'm free to date. I get to choose my own meals. I mean, I grew up in a pretty strict house, and so I think when the freedom hit me, I allowed it to take me away from my relationship with Christ. Now, I was still preaching weekend revivals for the school. I was taking, Christian classes as well as a regular. It's a Bachelor of Science degree. But instead of history, I took Christian church history, stuff like that for my requirements. But I had just drifted away from my relationship with Christ. I was no longer talking to Him. I was no longer allowing Him to direct my paths. I was no longer thanking Him for everything. I was no longer reading my Bible. I was no longer praying. I was just walking the part of a Christian that used to have a relationship but didn't have one anymore. And after probably 3 to 4 months of this, I just got so convicted. I felt so lost that I lost my Savior. And I remember going out to at night. Men didn't have curfews. Sorry, girls, you did, but we didn't. It was really late, maybe, the wee hours of the morning. I got up and took a walk, and I walked out to the baseball field, and I went down into one of the dugouts. And I just started praying again. And I honestly hate to tell you this, but I remember praying, Lord, if there's a God, because that's how far away I had drifted from Him. And I spent quite a bit of time in prayer with Him, finding Him again, confessing my sins. It was fantastic. It was great. And I got Him back, Now, at the time before this, I had quit listening to Christian music, one of the many things I had drifted away from. I was really into Pink Floyd. And, oh my gosh, who did the song Fire and Roller Coaster? I can't think of who they are now. But anyhow, I was into that kind of music, and I had a cassette player, and I had it hooked up to a speaker, and whenever I walked in my dorm, I would hit the play, and I would just listen to whatever I'd been playing. That was the music I'd been listening to and studying to. I'd gotten away from Christian music. So after spending about an hour or so out in this dugout, and finally got my life back right with Christ, I walked to my dorm. Now, I did not have a roommate, so or he was gone, I don't remember. But I walked in, it was in the wee hours of the morning, and I walked over, turned the lights on, I walked over to my cassette player, and I hit record, and this is the song that played. It's Welcome Back by Love Song. It's one of the first songs that Chuck Girard and Love Song ever recorded, and I don't know how it was in my cassette player. I do not know how it was queued up to this song, but it was. And so I want to share it with you. If you may be not as close to Christ as you used to be, you may be backslid a little bit, or you don't feel him like you used to, I hope this song will minister to you like it did for me. Chuck Girard was 80-something. He passed away August the 11th, just last month of 2025. I got to talk to him once or twice on the phone over this very song. One time, maybe 30 years had passed, and I called him when I was in my 50s just to let him know how much this song meant to me and to tell him the story I just told you. And at the time, this was before the internet was what it is now. I didn't have an access to that song, and I couldn't find his cassette or albums in the stores, and you just couldn't log on and download music like you can today. And so I asked him if there's any way he could sell me a cassette or sell me the album or something. I needed to get that music back. And he sent me an email with a link to it so it could download to my computer. And of course, he did that for free. And if you listen to the podcast that his daughter's producing right now about his life, you would understand that that's just the kind of guy he was. So we weren't friends, but I feel thrilled that I even got to talk to him a couple times on the phone and tell him how much he meant to me. There was another song I'll tell you about after this song, but I want to play this for you, and it's going to look a little weird, me just staring at myself in the camera while this music plays, but hopefully it'll come through clear, you'll like it, and you'll get the message. All right?
Yeah.
Now, maybe it was just me, but I think that was a miracle. It was a miracle that Christian music was even in my CD and my cassette player, and it was a miracle that that song was queued up at the very beginning. I literally hit the button, that music began to play. I knew the song. I fell on my knees and just, I could have been like Enoch at that moment. He could have just taken me on up to heaven and it would have been fine. It was absolutely amazing. And Chuck Girard blessed my life so many other ways, and I know he blessed so many other people's lives. He's considered the founder of contemporary Christian music, and his whole life he didn't start a career and sang Christian music as a career. He was simply seeking Jesus. His whole testimony is incredible about how before he knew Jesus and he was taking drugs, and all of his friends, they were just seeking some spiritual awareness, some spiritual something. The Beatles were doing the same thing at the exact same time, and he tells how I remember hearing his testimony how the Beatles' White Album came out. He thought this must be it. And they did vegetarian diets, and they were just eating fruits and nuts and all these things, chasing after God in some way. And then he found Jesus. And this is one of the first, they decided to use their talents, which was to sing and make music. This is one of the first songs that Love Song ever created. They created several albums after that. And, his daughter shares that years later, Chuck was continuing to go places, to speak, to share his testimony, to play music. And then when he'd sit in the lobby of churches or the lobby of a hall, and you know how that is, and it got CDs, as people came up to buy his CDs, he would always say, now listen, if they're $10. If you don't have the $10, you just got five will do. And if you don't have any money, just take the CD. It's yours. It's free. That's just the type of guy he was. His daughter shared, they were never rich, but God always took care of them. He touched my life dearly, and that song did as well. And I hope maybe if you're in a place where you're not as close to God as you used to be, or you feel like you ought to be, spend some time in prayer, find this song and listen to it and celebrate and just allow the love of God to embrace you. He had one other song I got to mention. He took Psalms 5, which is a morning song that's in the Psalms. And it's I learned how to sing that, and I don't sing for anybody, but in the shower or driving the car or when I'm walking or I'm just by myself and no one else is in the house, many times I would sing that song. I would guess with 365 days in the year, I have sung that song 5,000 times at least when I just wanted to start my day with the Lord. And so I encourage you to check that out as well. Chuck Girard, Love Song. You can find them on the internet. Enjoy all their different songs, but that particular one, nobody else has copied, nobody else has recorded it that I know of. It's powerful, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to follow my podcast. And if you like this, please share it with other people. I'd like for this to get around and let people know about Chuck Girard and his great music and how his songs and that particular song touched my life. Thank you very much. God bless. Thank you for listening. Hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.